What's up YouTube? Today I'll be doing a comparison between two Fanatec steering wheels, the Clubsport GT Alcantara wheel on Universal Wheel Hub versus the Mclaren GT3 wheel. I've had the GT Alcantara wheel for a while now, and I actually love it. The construction is super solid and it grips very well, so I really don't have any problem with this wheel. Recently, I've been racing in Assetto Corsa Competizione exclusively, so I wanted a wheel that better resembles what's seen in GT3 cars. Instead of spending $1,400 on a BMW M4 GT3 wheel, I decided to give the Mclaren GT3 wheel a try. The two wheels appears very differently in a side-by-side comparison. The GT Alcantara wheel has almost a full circle with a flat bottom, whereas the Mclaren GT3 wheel has only grips on the left and right hand side. Aside from the shape, the size is also different between the two. The GT Alcantara wheel has a diameter of 330 mm, whereas the Mclaren GT3 wheel has a diameter of 300 mm. The smaller size of the Mclaren GT3 wheel allows it to be turned more quickly, but would require a bit more force. Aside from size and shape, the button layout is also very different between the two wheels. For the GT Alcantara wheel on Universal Wheel Hub, although you can also customize the location of the buttons, they can only be moved in groups of 3. Within each group, the buttons are also placed fairly close together, allowing some room for false triggers. Another downside for series racers is that the wheel does not have dedicated knobs for TC or ABS adjustment. The Mclaren GT3 wheel, on the other hand, is designed for GT3 cars. The buttons are pretty spread out to prevent false trigger, and there's dedicated knob for things like TC and ABS to allow for easy adjustment on the fly. That being said, on the GT Alcantara wheel, you can actually use the funky button as TC or ABS. You can push the button up and down or left and right. You can even turn it left and right. So that gives you 3 axes in total. One thing to keep in mind is that the funky button is pretty prone to false triggers. Alternatively, you can also use the buttons. Now for the Mclaren GT3 wheel. Again, since it's designed for GT3 race cars, you got 2 knobs dedicated for TC and ABS. In addition, you also have 2 up and down switches for engine mapping or anything else that you want to be able to adjust on the fly. One thing to note for the TC and ABS knob on the Mclaren GT3 wheel is that even though the knob has several levels, they actually work like up and down switches. So instead of binding each level to a certain TC or ABS level, you would bind a right-hand turn to increase and a left-hand turn to decrease. That way, the knobs would work properly in the game. Another thing you need to do before you start racing is to match the TC and ABS level on the wheel to the current setting of the car. You can do this by going into pause menu and adjust the knob so that the number matches the setting of the car. That way, when you exit the pause menu and start driving, the TC and ABS setting of the car would always follow the knob on the steering wheel. Now back to the backside of the steering wheels. The shift paddle on the GT Alcantara wheel are pretty big and does not require much effort to trigger. The shift paddle on the Mclaren GT3 wheel is a bit smaller and a little bit stiffer, but when driving, they are just as easy to use. One interesting thing about the shift paddles on the Mclaren GT3 wheel is that both left and right side are connected. Pulling on one side also would trigger a push on the other side, so essentially, you can trigger both up and down shift using either hand. Now let's take a look at the mounting features. The Universal Hub uses QR1 adapter, which features a metal sleeve, a metal key, and 5 metal balls to interlock the wheel to the wheelbase. The Mclaren GT3 wheel comes stock with the QR1 Lite adapter. It features a plastic sleeve, a plastic key, and 1 metal ball to interlock the wheel to the wheelbase. The metal QR1 adapter is available as an upgrade for $100. To mount the QR1 adapter, simply pull back on the sleeve to disengage the lock, slide the steering wheel onto the shaft, and release the sleeve to lock it in place. To remove, just do the inverse. To mount the QR1 light adapter, start by pushing the wheel onto the shaft. Turn the knob with your hand to lock it in place. Remember not to over-tighten it. To remove, loosen the knob and pull the wheel off. When it comes to actual driving, both wheels works perfectly fine. With the more versatile shape, the GT Alcantara wheel is well suited for many different types of driving environment. The Mclaren GT3 wheel, on the other hand, is the ultimate weapon for GT3 races. The shape of the grips make it very easy to lock your hands onto the wheel. The buttons are also nicely spread out and right at your fingertip. On top of that, you also have dedicated knobs for things like TC and ABS, so it's easy to make adjustments on the fly. While the GT Alcantara wheel is very nice and versatile, for anyone that's racing GT3 cars, I would recommend the Mclaren GT3 wheel without hesitation. It really brings the immersive gameplay to a whole new level. Alright, so there's my comparison for the two wheels. I hope you find it helpful. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions. I'll try my best to answer them. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're interested in sim racing. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.